in the first chapter was pretty much about all the concepts and conditioning and things that we believe that don't work, that make no sense, that have to go. And by now we've all managed to forget all about that, so that is pretty good. And the second chapter was 2/3 about what we're not going to talk about, and 1/3 sort of indicating what we are going to talk about. And so tonight it starts some serious moon-toning. We're going to start putting stuff in instead of emptying out. And we're at the chapter entitled What Is? And any questions about anything up to this point? Now's the time. Otherwise, I think we'll just jump in. Let's read around a little paragraph at a time until we read the first section. Start first.
What is? Mystical truth has been revealed again and again throughout the last 4,000 years. It's not a secret. It hasn't been recognized by organized religions, since organized religions are formed by those who don't understand. However, mystical truth is available in a millennium of spiritual literature. The Vedas in India record the realizations many sages had over 3,000 years ago. These sages independently had mystical experiences and passed them on orally. Later, the Upanishads, which are 18 much shorter expressions of the same truth, were appended to the Vedas. All of these works point to the identical truth.
$2,500 years ago, Gautama and Buddha awakened while sitting under the Bodhi tree. His words were, "I am awake." His realization was the same truth pointed to in the Vedas and the Upanishads. At around the same time, Moses had a revelation he expressed as, "I am that I am." Again, the same truth. Then some Old Testament prophets, and then Jesus pointed to the same experience.
Yashtavatma Gita is a wonderful poetic rendition of the same truth. More recently, we have the ecstatic Islamic poets Rumi and Kabir, followed by a number of English mystical poets writing of their experiences of the same truth. In the last 100 years, there have been the great sages of India, Ramana Maharshi, Osho, Nisargadatta, Maharaj, and Niyam Karoli Baba.
Good job.
To mention only a few. Single experience. And of course, they are all consistent with the Westerners Robert Adams and Joel Goldsmith. There are numerous books of all these masters' words translated into English where necessary, available to anyone who is curious.
There are no authorities in this work except yourself. This book does not claim to be authoritative. It is an expression one person's understanding when pointing. Check out some of the works just mentioned. Find the masters who are speaking to you. You'll recognize them. Compare what they say. Perhaps this will help you empty out your own cup and begin to fill it with some truth pointers.
And finally, since we're going to the trouble of emptying out all our concepts of God, we'll try to point in truth all of these experience without using words that trigger conditioned concepts. The problem with loaded words like God, Father, Mother, and Son is that everyone has different meanings in them.
So there's no news in this stuff. It's been around for 4,000 years, and every great master that's ever lived has pointed to the same truth. The words vary from master to master because the students of each master vary a whole lot. Jesus couldn't possibly say what Gautama the Buddha said because Jesus was talking to a bunch of the tribal people in the Middle East, and Gautama the Buddha was talking to people who had a 1,000 year sophisticated spiritual heritage based on the Vedas. So the truths, the words sound differently, but if you can get past the hand points, it's different. But if you can get past the words and understand what they're saying, it's all been the same. Okay, questions? Go ahead.
All there is consciousness. The most succinct statement of the truth all these masters realize is all there is consciousness. This is the ultimate statement of oneness. Everything is one, and that oneness is consciousness. Notice that it doesn't say someone or something is consciousness or anything of anything. It's consciousness. The word consciousness is probably not loaded since we don't really know what consciousness is. We know that it is. That we are conscious, but we have nothing we can say about consciousness as a thing constant. Consciousness that is meant is exactly this awareness that we are all individuals experiencing right now.
Stop for a second. We may have mentioned this last week. The question is, we all accept it. We're all aware of the fact that we're conscious. Right now, we're conscious. We're all aware of the fact that we're aware. Okay? That's the consciousness that we're talking about. Just the one consciousness. All there is consciousness, this consciousness that we're all experiencing right now is what this is saying. And what that means will unfold, hopefully. Yes?
I'm aware of my consciousness through my senses.
No?
No, that's what I guess I'm asking. How am I aware?
That's a good question. You're aware of everything else through your senses. Who is it that's receiving the input from your senses? Who's conscious of or what is conscious of the input to your senses? Your senses receive sights and sounds and tastes and touches and things like that. What is conscious of the fact that input is coming? And your mind receives thoughts. What's conscious of the fact that thoughts are coming in and sights are coming in and sounds are coming in and tastes are coming in? There is a consciousness that is aware of the fact that we have five senses that are all functioning and we have a mind that thinks. There's something beyond the five senses and the mind that's aware of the process, of the five sense process and the mind process.
I don't understand, but I'll just listen.
No, it's a step back. It's the first step back. The consciousness includes all that. Maybe it'll get clearer here, but we're conscious of what we see, and we're conscious of what we hear, and we're conscious of what we taste, and we're conscious of what we think. We're conscious of the fact that we have senses. We're conscious of the fact that there is someone who has these senses. We're also conscious of the fact that we're conscious, which is outside of all of those senses and the thoughts.
My intellect's just fighting us, so.
Good. Drop your intellect. Very cool. But I hear that you're spinning a thing.
Doesn't the awareness initially start out in the mind and then drop into something else?
No. The mind is something we're aware of. We haven't identified it as something separate. Consciousness is the fundamental thing that exists. The mind is one of the things that consciousness is conscious of. It's also conscious of what the mind is cooking, thinking of and manifesting and all that. But consciousness is the fundamental thing that's outside of it. And this really is a step back. This is why we're talking mysticism instead of metaphysics. Remember that there's the material consciousness and then the metaphysics is the mental consciousness where we realize that material stuff is within mind. Now this is the mystical consciousness, which is aware that consciousness is the reality. And mind and the five senses are all functions within consciousness, or functions of consciousness might be another way of saying it. That the mind is one of the functions of consciousness. One of the ways in which consciousness functions is the mind. Another way that consciousness functions is creativity.
How do you know the difference between when it's a mental awareness and something else?
Mental awareness is not a meaningful term. Awareness, and you're aware of mental stuff. You're not mentally aware. Awareness is outside of mind.
So if I'm watching my mind, am I of mental awareness or no?
If you're watching your mind, you're aware. You're aware of your mind. If you're watching a boat, you're aware of the boat.
So you can't watch your mind with your mind.
Right. Mind is just one of the things that's within consciousness. And always start to get, yes, please.
You think when your mind and stuff starts becoming clear, that your conscience is a little bit clear? Or it's like when you start realizing things a little bit differently, you think that your conscience starts to work a little different?
It seems that way. It certainly seems that way. Actually, consciousness is always perfectly clear, but the amount of consciousness that we're aware of, tough words. Yeah. And we'll talk about the difference between consciousness and awareness as we go on, but we're only aware of a certain extent of consciousness, and the amount of the reality of consciousness that we're aware of is what expands. That's what the spiritual adult that we talked about in the workshops. Growing the spiritual adult means becoming more aware of the presence of God. So becoming more aware of the presence of what is, we'll say here.
And like last week you said, like, shit in the eye, and so like, is that true? Sorry, well, is that like your mind? I don't know.
Yeah, that's like, yeah, we could say that that's on the lens of your mind or something. As you're thinking, and the shit on the lens is all your false concepts, all your false beliefs. And as those stop, as that gets clear, then you begin to have the direct experience of consciousness itself. You become aware of the fact that there is consciousness. The fact is that we're so busy with our thoughts and with our ideas and with our concepts and everything that we miss the fundamental truth completely. We just are totally unaware of it. The example I like is a fish swimming in the ocean looking for the water. We're totally immersed in consciousness right now, and yet we're all unaware of it. Because we're so busy looking at minds and thoughts and ideas and concepts and pictures, and we're just totally unaware of the consciousness within which we're totally immersed.
So, and that's what happens when you practice self-inquiry.
It gets your mind to shut up, so that you can become aware of the consciousness that you are. The purpose of all productive spiritual practices is to quiet the mind. When the mind is silent, we talk about the silence, when the mind is silent, then here it is, then here's the present, then here's what is, then here's consciousness, here's whatever you call it. But if you're not silent, then your awareness is distracted and you're focused on whatever it is that's chattering rather than on what is.
Yes, when I meditate, my mind is very loud, and it's just a lot of influx, and then I still don't, whom I am. I just watch it anyways, and it doesn't matter if it's loud or not. And then once I just watch it, I'm not trying to make it quiet or louder or anything. But then, if that was you with quiet, once you end up in the seat of the observer and you watch, that is the quietness that you're talking about.
Right. You watch the mind, and we'll get more into this later, but yeah, what you do is you can't quiet your mind. Rashneesh used to just look at us and laugh and say, how shall I silence my mind? With my mind? Yeah. And he would just laugh and think that was the funniest thing. And what tool are you going to use to quiet your mind with? I think your fist. No, you have no tool with which to quiet your mind. But what you can do is take a half step back and start watching it. And if you just watch it without following it, without getting excited about it, without trying to stop it, without giving it any energy at all, it runs out of gas. It just sort of fizzles down and gets quieter and quieter and quieter. Because the only reason you have this sequence of thoughts and then what's chattering in your mind is that you're sustaining it. You're either trying to stop it, or you're excited about it, or you don't want that to happen, or you want this to happen, and what you're doing is you have these emotional reactions to all these thoughts, and that's what sustains the process. So if you can take that half a step back and just start watching it, and withdraw all your energy from it, you'll run out of gas. It really will. And then there'll be this gap, and there it is. Next paragraph.
The words consciousness and God are pointing to the same truth. Joel, recognizing the word God, was loaded, sometimes used the infinite invisible.
Yeah, Joel loves that term, the infinite invisible, and he says very clearly the reason he calls it the infinite invisible is because you can't possibly know what infinite means, and you can't have a concept about invisible. So that's why he refers to God as the infinite invisible. Same reason that I refer to it as what is. Because they're unloaded words, they don't have any, hopefully they have very little content.
Another used word that has skewed that association is spirit. We don't really have any idea what spirit is, but we generally agree it's not your mind, it's not mind, or it's not body or mind. The least loaded expression I know for all there is what is. What is. What is spirit, consciousness, God, and infinite invisible are used synonymously in this book. Any words that refer to the one ineffable truth about which we're going to talk.
What is ineffable? Inconceivable?
I'm sorry?
Ineffable?
Inexpressible, undefinable.
Now we can begin to explain why all concepts about God are false. Remember, every concept we have is within our own consciousness. If God is always consciousness, then our concepts are within God. God includes all concepts. A concept of God, it might be a limited description pointing at some aspect of what is, but it certainly is not a concept of all that what is. So we have a starting place that there is consciousness. The consciousness we are using to be different. Okay? That's the starting place. Start with consciousness. And do you get that? With that paragraph right above there clear? That if all there is consciousness, or if God is consciousness and God is everything there is, then any concept we have of God can't be all of God, because it's a concept, it's limited, it's within God. Okay? So you can't possibly have
a concept about God. A concept includes all of God, and that's what ineffable really means. It's literally impossible to have something express that which it is within. If everything is within God, then any concept is within God, so the concept can't be a correct concept of God, because it's within God, it's part of God. It's a concept in God.
Doesn't that mean also that like the yin and yang doesn't apply either? There's no, so if it's the same, then you can't have like a, I don't know how I'm trying to say. Sorry.
Okay. We'll get to the yin and yang in the next chapter. That's part of what appears to be, not part of what it is. All right. Let's move on.
What is this expressive thing? We can also probably agree that there is basically a creation of which we are conscious. If all there is consciousness, then creation must be a part of consciousness. Consciousness expresses man in the universe. Since consciousness is spirit, incorporeal, man and the universe are also spirit, incorporeal. Everything must be made out of consciousness. Since there is nothing else, so everything has to be spirit, not material, and perhaps we can also agree that there appears to be some sort of sustaining activity.
Everybody's happy with that?
Sustaining activity.
Oh, it's just asleep.
Sustaining activity, just something that keeps going.
Something that sustains something. That keeps it going, yes. You get that if all there is consciousness, then anything, or let's say all there is consciousness, and consciousness is spirit, they using those words interchangeably. So if all there is consciousness, then anything that is created within consciousness must be made out of consciousness, because there's nothing else to make it out of. I know this is very contrary to your intellect. That's why we left the intellect back in chapter 1. If all there is spirit, and something gets created, then it must be a spiritual creation, because there's nothing else to make it out of. And whatever we see, if we see something that's like matter, well, what could matter have been created out of? If all there is consciousness, it's not like there's consciousness in a pile of dirt over here that we can make stuff, that consciousness can make stuff out of, okay? It's like all there is consciousness. So whatever we see as creation is created by consciousness out of consciousness. That's what oneness means. That's what all there is consciousness means.
And that includes what we call evil.
We'll get to what appears to be in the next chapter, but yeah, whatever you see as evil, what you are interpreting as evil certainly can't be anything but spirit, can't be anything but God, but that's all there is.
So when you look at the person, the only truth about them is the spiritual truth. The only reality of them is the spiritual reality. Mm-hmm. And what you're looking at might be some aspects of that, but it can't be the whole of that, just like the word love can't be the whole of God.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Back to spiritual beings having human experiences. We're looking at the human experience, but what's there is the spiritual being. Okay? And the human experience is actually a concept of the spiritual being. Our concept of ourself and the other spiritual beings is what we call this human experience. But if all there is consciousness, and that's the truth that Buddha and Jesus and Lao Tzu and everybody else agree on, if all there is consciousness, then, and consciousness is the same as spirit, then there can't be anything except spiritual beings. An important point. And let me remind you that I don't expect anybody to buy this or believe it or accept it or take it to the bank or anything at all. I'm just here. I just want you to hear what we're saying, because believing it is just an absolute waste of time. Because when you look at all the other nonsense we believe, and that hasn't worked. Believing this is an absolute waste of time. We're pointing you in the right direction, hopefully. But it won't have value for you until you have the actual realization of it within yourself, and then it will have value to it. But being pointed in the right direction hopefully facilitates the having the realization. So all we're trying to do is set a context in which you might have the realization that all there is consciousness, or the realization of what consciousness is, or the realization of spiritual beings, or any of these little realizations, each of which can be a separate layer. But don't believe this stuff. There's no reason to. I'm not an authority, and you don't know that any of the people you refer to in here are authorities. But hear it as much as you can. And the fact is that when we get all the way through the book, then you probably want to go back to the start, because you'll go through it the second time and you'll hear it entirely differently. And when you get into the book, go back to the start and you'll hear it entirely differently. It's going to change every time you read it. It will open you enough that you will hear it more the next time.
So in the Tony Fischel story, when the spiritual teacher said to him, "There is no baby," another way to say that is like, there is no baby separate from what is.
No, what she was saying is, the story about Tony Fischel had a child who had some very serious childhood disease, and his teacher, when he called, said, "Tony, there is no baby." What she's saying is, all there is a spiritual being. The sick baby is your concept, and it has no reality. All there is the spiritual being, which is the creation of what is, which is part of what is. Yes. That's exactly what she was saying. There is no human experience little baby. All there is a spiritual being. And that's just your concept, your material concept, because you're having a human experience. So that's how you see it. That's what Robert always used to say. If people ask him questions, or they tell him something, and Robert said, "That's how you see it." And nobody realized the depth of what he was saying. And that's how you see it. So you're having a human experience, and so you're seeing a human experience. You're seeing people, human beings, good and evil, because that's the experience you're having. So that's your concept, your concept. Where are we?
Experiencing what is requires time and space. There needs to be an expanse of the experience and a duration for the experience to take place within. We are using the word mind to refer to the aspect of consciousness in which creation is expressed, the aspect that includes time and space. The material level of consciousness believes creation is external, real matter in space and time. The mental level has become aware that our experience of space, time, and creation is taking place in the mind.
So sort of take that as a definition of mind, okay, for our purposes, because mind has so many different meanings. We're using the word mind to mean that particular function of consciousness which manifests space and time and the things within space and time. And we'll talk more about it later, but you're going to don't say, "Well, that's not what my mind is," because I'm not telling you what your mind is or what psychology thinks mind is. I'm telling you how we're planning to use the word in this book, okay? And it's not right or wrong. It's how we choose to use the word in this book. As that faculty of consciousness which manifests stuff in space and time. Okay?
I'm still my chicken and egg thing again. I apologize with a stupid question, but when you said that about the concept of the person creates the experience, if someone like a Hitler had been surrounded by individuals whose concept of him was different, would that experience have been different? Or would he have been incapable of doing what he did because of the concept of who he was being different?
Yeah, who can say what would have happened? Because it depends so much on the consciousness of everybody that was involved in your question. By default, what they're saying is, if I have no reason to have my own concept of you, then what I'm saying is your concept, something that's pretty much determined by your concept of you. It's got overtones of me in it.
So it still starts with that concept that the person is.
People were saying
they have
Hitler's concept of Hitler pretty much.
Okay.
Except then they add their own conditioning gets added on top of that.
So you can't really have a situation where, like, my concept of myself would be one thing, and there would be thousands of people who have a different concept of me.
But that happens all the time. Everybody has a different concept of you. But we all pretty much would agree on what you look like, for instance. But we might all have different takes on what your behavior is, whether it's good or bad, positive or negative, et cetera, We all have our concept of you, and you have your concept of you. You're the driving. You're pretty much in charge. For instance, if you decide you're crippled, we'll probably all agree that you were crippled. But we all definitely have a different opinion. And your mother certainly has a different concept of you than your father or your boyfriend or your dog, We're all seeing our concept. We are seeing our own concept of each other. In fact, aren't you often amazed at the concept some people have expressed about you? Yeah, how big is that? That's how different their concept is from your concept. But somebody as focused as Hitler certainly resulted in a lot of people having overlapping concepts with his. Okay?
All there is consciousness, means consciousness must be the creator's principle. Consciousness is the only possible creator. But since consciousness is eternal and outside of time, we have a problem with the idea of creation. Creation seems to imply a particular time when creation occurred. And the same problem applies with sustaining. Sustaining means over time. What is simply is, eternal, unchanging being. What we see as creation is just a view of what is in the time and space continuum of mind. Our experience of creation unfolding is because we are experiencing it at time. We are witnessing the unfolding of what is over time.
The true nature of everything is the nature of what is, because there is nothing else. What is did not really create the universe. What is the universe. It is the very substance of the universe. Man and the universe are a continuous unfolding of what is, expressing or revealing itself throughout time and space. When we see creation as simply what is, with its various eternal characteristics, we are beginning to understand oneness.
Anybody get that at all, or where are we on that?
We can see that everything, the true nature of everything is what is.
Has to be, since that's all there is.
Right. Then we get the experience of oneness. That the true reality of everything is comprised of what is.
But there's another point here that could be expanded on a little bit. If space and time are within mind, and mind is within consciousness, then consciousness is outside of space and time. Okay? And that's what we talked about in the past week when we talked about dreams. When you have a dream and the dream goes on for hours, and yet if there was a EEG on your brain while you were having the dream, the actual duration of the dream was 1 or 2 seconds, and yet your dream to you seemed like it took, went on for hours. And that's a clear demonstration of the fact that and the space in which your dream took place, that bubble of space in which it took place, was nowhere. So there's a clear indication by our dreams that the mind is perfectly capable of creating space and time. Mm-hmm. And the point is that mind is the bubble within what is that contains the universe and the time over which the universe is expanding and unfolding and such like. But get that what is, or God, or the infinite invisible, is outside of time and containing time and containing space. It's outside of space. It's outside of mind. It contains mind. And that is not something you're going to be able to successfully conceive of. We're back to ineffable. You will not be able to form a concept of something which contains all of space and time, because if space and time is a bubble, what's it a bubble in? Okay? So you won't be able to get a satisfactory intellectual concept about that. Nonetheless, we're forced to see that God is outside of space and time.
Okay, I'm going to go for trying to get it. No, but my question is, if everything is consciousness, doesn't that include space and time?
Space and time is one function. It's a function of mind. It's a function of consciousness.
So it's not, like when you say it's outside of it, I'm seeing it separate from where it's all inclusive in.
But above and transcending. Let's use the word transcend.
Okay, that works for me.
Yes. What is transcend? It's a better word. Transcends mind. Mind is a function, and I don't want to say what is contains mind, because now what is having space and within which to contain. But what is transcends mind, and we can think of mind as the function of what is that creates time and space. Is that a little clearer, maybe? I like that better.
How does that help you?
Huh? I'm sorry?
How does knowing that help you? Because it seems like one way that it might help me is that if I'm identified with consciousness, then I'm specifically not experiencing time and space. I'm having...
We may still be experiencing it, but the point is that, and we'll get into that, the concept is introduced here now because without understanding that what is transcends time, we will not be able to understand what eternal means, and we will not be able to understand what omnipresent means, which is the word that people all the time throw out about God, which is God is omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, and what the hell does omnipresent mean? Well, you really need to understand, because omnipresent means both spatially and temporally. And you really need to understand that space and time are within God before you can understand what it means that God is omnipresent. So that's what it came in here for. We'll get to the three others later on, but not tonight. But
within that, it always seems to me that concept of the Big Bang, for me, is a place that everything there is and goes from. But of course, then there's that moving out from. But at least it allows me to have the concept, the unity, and that everything is made up of whatever that is.
Sure, and that's the material science story about it, and also in a lot of the Eastern religions, the Hindus and the people that where the Vedas came from have this concept of a universe that expands for 17 kalpas for kalpas a very long period of time, and when it contracts for 7 kalpas, there might be 23 kalpas with a K. Then it contracts back into nothing, and then it starts out again, and then comes back again. And so that is their way of having the expanding physical universe, and yet eternal, having the process go on eternal. Because, if you got a Big Bang, what was before the Big Bang? And they say, well, it's just finished getting back right at the Big Bang again, and that's what goes, the cycling goes on eternally. And they like to call that God breathing. Similar nonsense to that. But God breathing is fairly anthropomorphic. But everybody's grappling with the idea of eternal and having a temporal creation in an eternal God. And I think what was said in that one paragraph is about as much as you can say about it, and then we can always look aside and notice that our mind does it every night when we dream. Does the same sort of thing, creates time and space, And that's about as much as we're going to see about that tonight.
So when I start trying to have think about that, it starts to hurt after a while.
Yeah.
As soon as I wrap my mind around it, it needs more space and takes up more room. It's just that sort of experience. But I like the idea of the principle, trying to understand the principle of the thing or the nature of the thing. The nature.
Yeah, well, the best we can, remember this book is called Pointing at the Moon.
Yeah. How to explain it?
Are we beginning to understand the title to the book? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're not going to get a hold of this, but what you are going to do is empty out a bunch of small, finite, conditioned concepts that our parents and school teachers and people like that have told us that are sheer nonsense, that can't possibly make sense, that if looked at casually don't make sense, they're inconsistent. And so if we look at the conclusions we're forced to just from the premise that all there is is consciousness, which is what all the enlightened masters agree on, then we begin to see the nonsense that we've been fed.
Why is it that if we are these conscious beings having human experiences, do we hold on to nonsense for so long? Is there a comfort there?
That's the way it works.
I mean, if it's not true, I just find that interesting.
The whole human experience is not true. So why is there a human experience?
I don't know. I was asking that.
So those questions really have no meaning.
Yeah.
The answer to that question is because that's the way it appears to work. There's no...
Right.
We're looking for nice anthropomorphic purposes. Well, why is God doing this to us? And the whole question is that the sentence can't be phrased. God is not doing this to us. God is outside of time. God is eternal. And this is the way it appears to be. That's the way it works. Next.
Those who said, "He who knows says not. He who says knows not." Now we're beginning to see what he meant. What is indescribable. But we can talk about it, and we can point at it like the finger pointing at the moon. The problem is that we are used to functioning as human beings, physical bodies with 5 material senses and a finite mind. These bodies are a part of the creation within mind, and these 5 senses can't perceive anything which is not within mind.
finite brain, thinking sequentially in time cannot comprehend infinity. This, of course, is the reason we implored you in the beginning not to get your intellect involved. The intellect is the wrong tool. This is something that has to be experienced by the spiritual being that is having the human experience. Next, we'll try to expand our understanding by pointing at some of the aspects of what is.
I think we'll stop there now.
More Kool-Aid, please.
We're at the point now that everything we shove in is going to shove something out. Is that true? Everybody have that sense that there's as much in there right now as we can have in there or so?
Yeah.
So let's just stop right there. That's plenty of stuff to play with. And it's perfectly reasonable to go back and read just those two sections again during the week a couple of times. And again, don't try to study them and don't try to memorize them, but hear it. Just let it soak in. You know, what we want to do is osmosis. We want to absorb this stuff. We just want to learn it in. We want to be open. I was talking with somebody the other morning. We have both active and passive use of the same sense. I was talking to, as a matter of fact. I can look and I can see. And I can listen and I can hear. Now, if I listen, I'm listening for something or to something to the exclusion of everything else, okay? Or passively just hear what is. Similarly, I can look for something or at something, and that's what I'll see, or that's what I'll see the absence of. Or I can just see what's coming. In one case, I'm directing my eyes, looking at that plant. In the other case, I'm passively letting light strike my retina without any selective process at all. Okay, so there's both an active and a passive way I can use my senses. And in this stuff, be passive or letting it in. If you're looking for anything, it's wrong. You won't find that here. If you're trying to compare it with stuff you got, it's not here. You know, they're looking at the hand, and the moon's up there. So get passion. Just try to hear, but don't listen. Just try to see, but don't look. Okay? Don't stay it, but let it in. It's the important thing. We still have some time. How are we doing with flashcards? Is anybody playing with the flashcards? Is anybody having fun with flashcards? Is that appropriate for this workshop or not?
Yeah, I think looking at, changing your perception of, you can't change anything but your perception of it. If I can accept the fact that, mind is a function of what is, like, intellectually accept that. Yeah, I know I'm sick of having a human experience. And that would be really, really nice to get outside of having that human experience.
Wake up.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you look at even the flashcard of it's so difficult because I keep getting sucked back into the human experience.
And that's what the flashcard is for, to deprogram you, to remind you, to sort of wake you back up again, minute by minute. So do we want to keep on with flashcards? No?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. This chapter's flashcard is, of course, all there is consciousness. Whatever that means to you, but play with it. Whenever anything confronts you, run, all there is consciousness past. Whatever that means to you. That might mean that you would say, oh, well, that's a spiritual being, or oh, it's just spirit, or oh, that, or there is no baby, or whatever. I don't know what that will mean to you, but whenever you're confronted with anything, good or bad, Right now, all there is consciousness against it. Hold that up against it. And see what that means for you. Maybe we'll play with that next week. So we're not going to go any further, but we have 10 or 15 minutes. Does anybody have any questions or comments or anywhere place they want to go? I don't mind stopping early, but we can certainly sit here for another 10 minutes and talk about anything you want to talk about.
It's like a hard flashcard.
Yeah, it is. It is a hard flashcard. It's also a hard chapter. The good news is, we start really easy, and then the second chapter is really easy, and then we jump off the cliff, okay? The good news is that this chapter and the next chapter is all the stuff, and then the last 4 chapters are just playing with it. So, we're right in the center of it right now, and this is very hard, and you're not going to get it because you're not going to be able to draw your blank. And yet you are hearing stuff, and you are in the consciousness of people who have some sense of it, and so you are getting it. Behind or outside of your intellect, and we'll get through this stuff, and we'll spend probably 6 or 8 weeks on the next 2 chapters, and then we play with them for 4 more chapters. So there's really only 2 chapters. The only information is what is and what appears to be. Why are they so that damn different? Right? And then the further chapters are how do I get out of it? How do I get out of it? How do I improve it? Stuff like that. But this is the meat. We're really jumped right into the meat right here. This is it. We're in the center of it. It doesn't get any harder. And I don't know any other flashcard to use on this chapter except all there is is consciousness. All there is spirit. All there is spiritual beings. Everything is a spiritual being. You might find a way you can say that that's easier for you to play with. Let's get quiet. 2 or 3 minutes of meditation here. Let's soak in while we're here together. Okay, thanks for coming. I love you all.